Hey everybody, I'm Michael Krawic, and I appeared in 3 different Star Treks, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, and as Stron in Star Trek Enterprise. And you are listening to Trek Untold.
Welcome back to Trek Untold, the Star Trek podcast that goes beyond the stars. I'm your host, Matthew Kaplowitz. This week on the show, we're joined by an actor who has seen it all and done a lot of very cool and very different things on television and film. And it just works out conveniently that he also happened to do some Star Trek episodes. And that gentleman's name is Michael Krawic. Michael has appeared 3 times in Star Trek history in 3 different shows. He first appeared as a Maquis member named William Patrick Samuels from the 2nd season DS9 episode titled The Maquis. Next, he popped up in Voyager as a Catian alien in the 4th season episode Day of Honor. Finally, his last appearance was certainly the one most Trekkies remember him from, and that was his role on the 2nd season episode of Enterprise as the Vulcan named Stron in that fan favorite Carbon Creek. Outside of Star Trek, you've seen Michael in shows and films like Murphy Brown, Mulholland Falls, Sliders, Seventh Heaven, Walker Texas Ranger, Sour Grapes, CSI, The X-Files, Legally Blonde 2, Angel, Malcolm in the Middle, and Paranormal Activity, The Ghost Dimension, just to name a few. Now, what's really kind of cool and a little bit different from this interview is the fact that Michael currently resides in Thailand. So it's always fun to hear about what life is like on another part of the world, and it's pretty different from the hustle and bustle of Hollywood. Michael is a great storyteller with some stellar roles to his name, and not only that, he is someone with a real admiration for the Star Trek franchise. So let's get ready to learn all about the life and career of the very, very talented Michael Krawic. But before we begin this week's episode, I want to remind you to follow Trek Untold on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Trek Untold, all one word. You can get show updates, check out some fun memes, and let me know what you think about what's going on with the current events in the Star Trek universe. You can also support this show directly on Patreon at patreon.com/TrekUntold, where you can support this show for as little as $2 a month. At higher tiers, you can listen to the shows before they come out, know about my guests well in advance, and even have a chance to ask them questions, get transcripts of these episodes to make sure you get all the info, and more benefits coming soon, including watch parties and live streams. But that's all dependent on more fans like you coming over and letting me know you want to be a part of events like that. If you want some Trek Untold merchandise, check out our Teespring store for gear and apparel, including shirts, hats, stickers, water bottles, notebooks, and a whole lot more. New designs will be added throughout the year, so it's always worth taking a peek. Trek Untold also has an Amazon shop where you can peruse everything Star Trek, sci-fi, and geeky on Amazon in one convenient location. If you're looking for a gift for the Trekkie in your life, or maybe want to see some of my favorite non-Star Trek things that you can get for yourself, check out the link for my Amazon shop in the show notes on the audio version and in the description below this video on YouTube. If you're listening to us on iTunes or any other audio platforms that allow for ratings and reviews, please leave us a 5-star rating and a positive review to help out this show. If you're watching it on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe to us at youtube.com/nerdnewstoday and give the video a thumbs up and a comment. All of these things help more people find this show and to continue growing and bringing you awesome guests each and every week. Now, without further ado, let's beam in this week's guest. Computer, access interview file. And welcome back to Trek Untold, and joining us all the way across the globe in Thailand. In fact, it's our first time talking to anybody who's in Thailand, which is really cool. We have Michael Krawic today. Michael, how's it going?
Hey, hi, good, awake. It's 8 a.m. here, doing fantastic. And it's amazing, isn't it? We can do this.
Yeah, this is pretty amazing. I mean, to be fair, I do wish I was in Thailand with you right now, but yeah, the fact that we can just virtually do this is pretty cool.
It is, yeah. Are you in the East Coast or the West Coast? I think you're the East Coast, right?
I'm in the East Coast, so you are in the future. You're basically almost a full day ahead of me in the future. So how is the future, by the way? Any news to tell us? Any lotto numbers?
You don't want to know. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, right.
Okay. Well, in that case.
No. Future's okay out here. It's such a I don't want to, waste a lot of time about Thailand, but it's a beautiful country, and we it was it was a plan that, and my wife is Thai, and so we decided to move out here, sort of to retire, not really retire, but sort of live out here most of the time in July 2019, and then COVID hit and all this kind of stuff happened. So we're building a house out here and a pool and all this stuff and outdoors. I'm in a beautiful area, about 3.5 hours south of Bangkok on the Gulf of Thailand, about 2 kilometers from the water. It's very nice here.
Yeah, I imagine it's a very serene, very beautiful place just to be.
It is. I mean, I'm kind of in a sort of a rural suburban area, but it's more rural, and it's so I mean, if I just walk out the door and I look over the barbed wire fence to the left, I'm liable to see somebody's cows grazing on the I mean, that's the way it is. There's a unique thing here where it's kind of an unwritten rule that if you're driving your own cows, and people only have like 2 to 5 to 10 cows maximum, and you see them going up and down the streets, their minder takes them on a motorcycle usually, and he's got a little thing, and they follow him. They can go into any unoccupied land by tacit owner's consent, just to chew the grass, graze there, because it sort of benefits both people. The owner gets their weeds, chopped down, and the farmer gets to feed his cows. So this is the way it is here.
That's such a different way of life. That's pretty amazing.
Oh, that's a whole nother Zoom conversation.
Oh, yeah.
We can go into that later. Yeah.
Well, let's go ahead and jump into our interview today, because we got a lot to talk about with your career, and especially all the Star Trek stuff. But let's just start at the very beginning, Michael. And can you let me know, what's your earliest memory of Star Trek? Did you grow up as a kid watching it?
I did. The first one, Star Trek.
Yep.
I'd never seen anything like that before, and it's because of the nature of the stories always had a moral tone to it, a lesson that was always embedded within each episode. I always felt like I was learning something, and also I didn't think about it at the time, but it was one of the most earliest diverse casts, alien races, ethnics, race, religions, all thrown into one, spaceship. And then all these life lessons that were being embedded in all the episodes. I just couldn't believe it. And, and of course, all the swashbuckling and the stuff. So my favorite character really was Spock.
Of course, he's the scientist. He's the explorer. I can see it.
Yeah, but I liked everybody in that, Bones and Bill Shatner and all those guys. I think this probably better than I, but a lot of today's astronauts have credited at various Star Trek, generations for sparking their own interest in space. And it influenced them, and Star Wars as well, but Star Trek really.
Yeah, I can't imagine too many astronauts going out in space with lightsabers, but we'll get to that day eventually, hopefully.
Yeah, I know.
Well, we know that right now you are living in Thailand, but let's back up the story of Michael Krawic for a second. Can you tell us where you were born, who your parents were, and what little Michael wanted to be when he grew up?
I've lived in probably 10, 5, 6, 7 different places in the U.S. I was born in Texas, didn't live there long, just maybe as a baby for a year. I lived about a year in Mississippi, I think. I don't remember that either. And then I was in Colorado with my mom and my grandparents. My dad, they had split up, my dad and mom. Now, the kicker to this story is I didn't know I had another father, a bio father, until I was 15 years old. That's another story. So the father that I knew was the guy that that my mom married second, which was out in California. So I moved to California when I was about 4 or 5, and my stepdad, who I thought was my dad, was, guess what? Project engineer in all the Apollo space programs and all that stuff. And So, I mean, I couldn't get away from the space thing, right? I mean,
Wow.
It was all around. I think he was an engineer on the second stage for the moon rocket. And then we were transferred. We lived there about 10 years, and then we were transferred to Florida, Cape Kennedy, for my last 3 years of high school. And I went to 3 different high schools, actually, 1 in California and 2 in Florida. And at age 18, my parents split. Now they had my mom had 6 more kids after me. So I'm the oldest of 7 in that family, right? So I left home at 18, and I ended up in Washington, D.C. But all along, I'd started doing theater. I did it in high school. Someone dragged me to an audition for, I think it was Christmas Carol. He said, "Oh, just come." I'm like, acting. I mean, what do you? So it just struck a chord with me, And I thought maybe, so I put myself through college, through community college, through university, and then later through grad school. And I didn't. You asked what I want to be when I grew up. I had no clue. I thought, I don't know, doctor. I thought a lawyer for a while. I thought a psychologist. But once I got introduced to the theater, and then later film and TV, that just, overrode everything. So eventually I got a BFA in theater and directing and acting from West Virginia University, which had a really great department, believe it or not, a great theater department, great facilities. But I felt that my training wasn't complete. I needed to do more. So I auditioned and got into one of those conservatory programs, like Juilliard or Yale. This was the Goodman School of Drama in Chicago, which had been in existence since 1925. And long story short, on that school is they were part of the Art Institute of Chicago. And, arts funding being as it is, they could no longer support that school after 50 years. So DePaul University, thankfully, absorbed school into their campus. So my class, I was in the master's, the MFA class, was the first class at the new old school at DePaul University. So it was 3 years of pretty intense training, voice, dance, speech, scene work, a lot of plays and stuff. So I guess my professional career, technically it started in summer stock a few years before that. I did a couple of years of summer stock theater. I mean, getting paid was like $40 a week was unbelievable. I'm getting paid for this, and then luckily I was in Chicago, which has a great, great theater scene. It was especially in the years I was there, the famous, have you heard of the Steppenwolf Theater Company?
I'm familiar with that name, yeah.
Yeah, they've produced John Malkovich, Laurie Metcalf, Terry Kinney, Gary Sinise, who did, Forrest Gump, and just a ton of amazing actors. And I actually was cast in one of their shows, which was a dream that came true for me, was to work with these guys. So I began my professional theater career really in earnest after I graduated from Goodman School of Drama. And I actually got cast in my first film or TV thing in Chicago. That's where I got my union cards.
I'll be asking about that too in a second, but I actually want to back it up for a minute to, I guess, let's dissect high school era Michael or college era Michael. What was it about performing that actually got you into it and kept you in it? Because, as you said, it wasn't really a thing you ever considered until that day you did the audition.
Well, without going too heavy into, family stuff, I can say that my family life was very complicated. It's my stepdad and my mom and stuff. And there was a lot of, it was difficult. There was a lot of stuff going on that was, I was trying to find ways to kind of escape the tension and the problems and being in fear a lot and stuff like that. One of the ways was reading. I would bury myself in a book, And then when my buddy dragged me off to do this audition for Christmas Carol, I suddenly found an expression I was fairly, as a normal kid, I was kind of introverted, but I was also a weirdly kind of a clown too. I was looking for attention, kind of talking this and this. And, I was always trying to, because I'd changed schools and all this stuff, I never felt like I fit in anywhere, right? By my senior year, I did, finally, But getting cast in that first play and then getting cast in the lead in the senior class play, So to answer your question, I think I found a way of escaping or channeling all these things I'd been bottling up inside, a way of using words, a way of connecting with a sort of pseudo family that you make with theater and even with film and TV. You make a little family for a little while. So it became kind of a way of being able to express myself, to connect with other people. This was long before I learned the how-tos, the technical stuff about acting. I didn't know what I was doing. I just knew that I had a tremendous amount of emotion hidden and a tremendous amount of eagerness and it was fun. That's the thing. It was kind of fun too. So it sort of saved my life in a way, honestly, in my view. It was always a way to be able to be creative. And I mean, you've heard this story 1,000 times with actors, right? Who've come from difficult backgrounds.
I can tell you, in fact, the sentiment of just, someone who moves around a lot and is trying to basically find a reliable, consistent way to make a family. I mean, theater has been the place where a lot of folks go, and I've heard this in the show again and again. So it's very much a shared experience.
It is. And when you meet other actors, you begin to find you have a lot of things in common. Some of those things are difficult backgrounds. Some people have wonderful childhoods, but I didn't appreciate it at the time, Matthew, but all those things that were so difficult for me, all those things that were so difficult to fit in and the family stuff was all going in, and it was all I became a very observant person, and also I'm not likening myself to a soldier, but when you're in a situation that you're on edge all the time, you become extremely observant about everything around you. So one of the gifts I was given as a kid was I became very observant to reading the room, to reading people, to reading moods and stuff. So and I became very curious about people in general. So I think as an actor, you have to have that. You have to have a curiosity about people, their behavior, culture, all these kind of things, Going back to Star Trek, watching it, I always longed to be anywhere but where I was. And boy, was that a place I could escape, was, watching shows like that,
Well, you mentioned summer stock being your first theatrical paid gig, but what about TV? What was the first time you got paid for a TV gig?
The first time I did, and I don't know why it's not on IMDb. It was the very first one. It was an ABC pilot of a TV show called Lady Blue. It was set in Chicago. It was a cop show with a lady, a woman as the chief, as the lead cop. And I played a bank robber. There's three of us, I think, robbing a bank, and she comes in and saves the day, And I can tell you the funny thing about that is, because I came from a background of theater. At that point, I'd probably done, 40, 50 plays, maybe in my life. At least 30, 40, 50 plays at that point, maybe. I don't know if you've done theater, but it's a kind of a different muscle you use depending on where you're playing, in a 1,000-seat house or a 50-seat house. Well, what I didn't understand was, I had a very active role in this bank robbery, where I was shooting sawed-off shotguns, and I was, telling everybody to get down and all this stuff. And I went in just blasting away with my acting, and it was the wide shot. What I didn't realize was that when they're shooting the wide shot, you got to save all that stuff for your close up. And so some actor says, I think the director says, hey, man, that was great, but save a little for when we move in on you. I went, oh, move in. Okay. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Close-ups. Right. Okay. Got you. So I had to learn, to save your energy for the medium shots and the close-in shots and stuff like that. It was a lesson I constantly had to learn as a theater trained actor, that less is more.
That's very much the economy of motion and emotion when it comes to acting on stage versus acting on screen. That's a good lesson to learn.
Well, I'm going to tell you a funny story. If I could just cut ahead to another project I did years later. I was working with it was an independent film in LA, and I had a nice role as the pharmacist father of one of the leads. Okay. And the director was a well-known MTV director or something, or music video director. I don't remember his name at the moment, but so I was doing this stuff, and these scenes, and he came to me at one point and he says, and I think he was a Brit. He said, Michael, he might have been an Aussie. He says, can I order with you, mate? I says, yeah. He goes, what you done, mate, is quite good, very good. But I've got to remind you, mate, that when people go to the film and see you, your bloody head's going to be about 20 feet tall. 20 feet tall. Your bloody head's going to be 20 feet tall. So everything you do is magnified by 20 at least. So he says, mate, when I'm doing the close-ups on you, just keep what you're doing, but bring it in. Because every little is huge. He made me laugh, but I thought, God, what a great lesson he's given me. He's saying, doing what you're doing, that in the medium and the long shot, economize it. And remember the 20-foot head on a movie screen, And you see the really, really great screen actors. They really know how to do that, Everything is in the eyes or just in the thoughts. And I had to learn that stuff. I used to watch Michael Caine. He just give these seminars. Michael Caine's incredible as far as he knows what to do with a camera and how to play a scene, how to be a film actor. He really does.
And, I hate to break up this actual serious acting talk right now, but I got to ask, because there is something on your IMDb that I was really interested in. And you did some work on, there's plenty of things, but there's in particular this one show, which is In Living Color. And I saw that on your page, and I was like, well, what did he do there? Because I'm really, that's an awesome show. So what was your, what did you do on In Living Color? You were on like 3 episodes, right?
I think I did 3 or 4, and it was with Jim. It was before Jim Carrey became Jim Carrey. But this is what that show, of course, catapulted him into being Jim Carrey. And if you remember the show, there were small parts that actors played that that they filled in little different parts in the sketches, that the main guys were doing, right? The Wayans brothers and all that. So I played various roles. I'm telling you, that set was like, it was like being at a party. It was unbelievable. It was really a lot of fun. Jim was really a nice guy. He really was, just made us feel comfortable and stuff like that. So it was weird. It was fun. Yeah. Cause we weren't a part of the regular cast, and in between takes, they cranked the music up and it was like a party, like the Wayans brothers party, and it was there was an improvisational quality to it. Of course, there was sketch work that was done. And I love doing that kind of stuff. So I don't know how you ended up getting cast, but it was fun. It really was.
In Living Color is just, it almost feels like a completely different era of television now, because it was filmed in front of a live studio audience. Like you said, they had the live music playing. So it was like so many different things happening at once. And it's a type of thing you just don't get anymore at all.
No, it was very unique. I was thinking probably the precursor would be Second City, in Canada, or, even, and of course, Saturday Night Live, but that was much more structured, kind of show and sketch stuff. But this was more like really hip guerrilla, TV stuff. It was fun. It was like, wow, how did I get in this world, man? I just walked into the looking glass. This is really different,
And, while checking out your resume and while perusing IMDb, getting all this info about you, I discovered that you were part of one of the shows that we always talk about here on Trek Untold, and that is Murder, She Wrote. And you were in the very first Murder, She Wrote movie, which, by the way, and you can let me know if you worked with this person or not, but it also featured another Star Trek alumni and another guest in this podcast, Mr. Richard Reilly. So I would love to hear exactly what you did on the movie, because I couldn't find it to watch, but I'd love to hear what your role was and if you got to spend any quality time with Angela Lansbury.
I did. Yes to that last question. But to your first question, I played a bad guy who was I was kind of throughout. I was trying to remember what I did. I was like I was like a bad cop or something. And I ended up we were on a train. I ended up getting thrown off the train, and I tried to hold her up. I had a gun to her head and stuff. And then somehow I got thrown off the train by somebody else, and, I died. So I had a bunch of little scenes with her, and then with a couple other people. And it was fun because I insisted on doing my own stunt. It was a moving train, and I thought, can I throw myself off? Oh, well, we don't know about that. I mean, I said, well, let me try. So, I did it a few times. Then he had a stunt guy do it too, because they were worried about me breaking my back or something, So, but I'm not sure if I was killed. No, I wasn't killed on it, because I remember I was thrown off the train. I remember one of the last shots of me was like getting to my feet,
all woozy.
And like woozy. The train is headed down the tracks, and I'm now irrelevant, right? So. But to your second question, there was a lot of, as you know, in film and TV, and especially even a TV movie, there's a lot of downtime. So I parked myself right next to where she sat on on the set. She couldn't have been nicer. She regaled us with stories. She asked me questions about me. She talked about her background and her theater background, and her television and film career and stuff. And that, for me, that was one of the best parts, was working with Angela. She just was a true, warm-hearted star, not pretentious in the least, but a real pro. I mean, yeah.
And another show we love to discuss here on Trek Untold, which is totally unrelated to Star Trek, but it's Walker, Texas Ranger. And you were in the season 6 episode, which is called Forgotten People, and you played Dr. John Daniels. And, in addition to getting some time with Chuck Norris, you also got to work with Wilford Brimsley pretty closely. The finale of the episode is you tying him up. And you also got to work with another great character actress named Gail Strickland, who is also a Deep Space Nine alumni. So, I'd love to hear if you have any memories about your time on set on Walker.
Yeah, I didn't have any scenes with Chuck Norris in that particular episode. I mean, my stuff was mostly with who was his second in command. It was he was a very serious guy, African American actor.
Oh yeah, talking about Clarence Gilliard.
Yeah. That was my antagonist, because I played and Gail was we were like bad doctors. I mean, I forget what we were doing. We were some formula. We were doing something illegal. Yeah,
you were administering some illegal pharmaceuticals to I think a lot of older people, and eventually did get to smooch her also, which is one of the perks of being evil, I guess.
That's right. So I was kind of second under Gail Strickland, who was the experimental doctor, and I was doing what she told me. I was kind of scared of her, but Gail and I got to talk a lot. And it was really neat. She's a great lady. And in fact, I think we had the same manager for a while, Beverly Dean in Hollywood, because Beverly knew Gail as well, very well. And also I worked with, I can't remember her name now. But I met a couple of people I still stay in touch with from that episode. But I met Chuck, but I didn't really get to know him. I mostly worked with Clarence and Gail in that thing. Another bad guy, another bad dude, I always play, a lot of times I play these bad guy lights, I call them. Not the real heavy bad guy, but, sort of the sidekick bad guy, or the second bad guy, or a smarmy bad guy. It's happened a few times. I don't know why.
It's weird to me too, because I mean, talking to you now, there's not a bad bone in your body as far as I can tell. But for every reason, I mean, that's usually how it is, though, isn't it? It's usually like the nice guys who play the best bad guys.
That's what I hear. Yeah, I mean, and every actor will tell you, and they've told you that the most fun parts are playing bad guys. You got to get to tap into that part of you that's kind of it's a certain energy that you aren't in life, but it is inside everybody. You get to try to access that for a while. Make believe. So it's fun.
Trek Untold will return momentarily.
Trek Untold is sponsored by Triple Fiction Productions. Celebrating 15 years in business in 2023, TFP creates 3D printed Star Trek and sci-fi inspired items that fit into any collection. Whether you're a cosplayer who wants a Starfleet phaser, a Bajoran tricorder, or a Klingon dagger, or a toy collector looking for that special accessory or diorama to make your figures truly stand out, Triple Fiction Productions has exactly what you need. And for you figure fanatics, that includes products that are the perfect size for Galoob, Mego, Playmates, and everything in between. All products are 3D printed in the US, with new designs constantly being updated on their website. Repeat customers can sign up for TFP's loyalty program for free, where the more you order, the more discounts you receive. TFP also has a Pay What You Want section, where clearance or misprinted items are available at a discounted price. Best of all, every product can be shipped worldwide. As a special bonus for listeners of this show, Trek Untold has a special discount code just for you. Enter Untold10 at checkout for 10% off of all orders with no minimum purchase required. That's 10% off using Untold10. To see all of their products, head to triple-fictionproductions.net. Or to stay up to date on their newest products, find them on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Triple Fiction Productions, where something is only impossible until it happens.
Hey, I'm Licia Nav, aka Ensign Sonia Gomez from Star Trek TNG, and now Captain Sonia Gomez on Lower Decks with her own ship, the Archimedes. Yay! I finally got a promotion after 25 years. So anyway, I'm here to talk about drivebydogooders.org. It's a little charity I run where we go to the outskirts of Skid Row, and from our car windows we hand out basic human essentials like water, wipes, Coldstream cheese, socks, tarps, masks, t-shirts, things to keep people warm. So we just think that everyone deserves clean water, some protein, and a way to clean themselves, especially during Corona. We also hand out masks to those who really, really need it, who live in tents on the street, mainly the disabled and elderly who have a really hard time getting to services. And we do all of this with no agenda, just pure giving, no overhead. If you'd like to go to the website and donate, it's 100% tax deductible. And if you click on the donate button, you can go right to the $35 option and pick a signed autograph picture of either the Star Trek The Next Generation or Lower Decks, or Total Recall, where I played the three-breasted mutant hooker on Mars, and that's the X-rated version. Put in the comments section your address and anything you'd like me to write, and I'll personally inscribe it and mail it off to you immediately. And again, that's drivebydogooders.org. Captain Sonia Gomez, signing off.
All right, well, Michael, let's beam into our Star Trek discussion here, because we got a few different roles to talk about. And so your first time ever was in the second season DS9 episode, The Maquis. And you played a character named William Patrick Samuels. He's a saboteur who plants an explosive on DS9. Gets to have some fun with the Cardassians. So let's just start at the very beginning here. So do you remember what the auditioning process was like?
Not specifically, but I do remember meeting. You always meet in those days. It was Junie Lowry Johnson and Ron Surma were the two casting directors. And Junie Lowry Johnson, of course, did many. She did Voyager, then she did Enterprise, and so it's sort of like if you get into the Star Trek family and you don't screw it up, and they kind of like you, they'll often bring you back for later in the same series or in a new series that they've generated, which you'll get to, but that happened to me. I do remember being in the room with Rick Berman, as one of the co-creators of that. Roddenberry was not in the room for that. In fact, I'm not sure he had, would you know this? I think I read that he didn't have direct involvement with DS9. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
by the time DS9 was happening, he was pretty much phased out. I think, well, yeah, by the time you were working, he would have still been alive, I'm pretty sure. Don't quote me on that.
Yeah.
But I think fairly early on in TNG, they kind of started to change his role a little bit. So by the time Deep Space Nine happened, his hands would have been more or less off of that.
Yeah, but I think we all felt sort of an homage to him, though, because of his vision and the kind of content that he helped create and influence and stuff. So we always think of him, anybody who's ever worked on Star Trek. But I do remember that I had to go back a couple of times for, the second audition. And boy, when you get that first call that you got booked on a Star Trek, I mean, talking about pinching yourself, I'm like, wait a minute, wasn't I just watching this as a kid? But of course, it's a completely different setup. You're on a space station. You're not in a spaceship and all that. But it was, it had the same sorts of things going on, the difficulty with races and the, power struggles and all this stuff. And I was a terrorist, as you know, right? Yeah, which I enjoyed doing. So planting that bomb on the, on the vessel. But I don't survive, as you know, either.
Yeah.
Right. So.
Yeah, whatever happens to you, I think it's implied off screen. But yeah, you didn't make it out of there for whatever reason. But let's actually, being a Star Trek fan or someone who grew up watching it, DS9 is a pretty different kind of Star Trek show. So when you get there, when you get on set, I mean, what did you think of this place? And again, this is second season, so it's still fairly early in this show's run. But what did you think of the sets and how different they looked? I mean, was this like anything you'd done before?
No, absolutely not. And I discovered it on every set that I worked on later with Voyager and then with Enterprise. But they had, I mean, it was all, inside, I think stage 9 or something. I can't remember, but it was a Paramount. First of all, just to walk the Paramount lot. Okay, check that off your bucket list, right? I mean, the first time I was like, oh man, I can't believe this, Every time I walked on a lot for the first time in LA, it was like, wahoo, it was really lots of fun. And, but then it became, once you're there about a week as a guest star and, became kind of used to it. But the sets were so realistically fake realism that you just can't believe it. I mean, they have curved, they had like a curved rooms and stuff because the spaceship is curved. And they had, just facsimiles of buttons and this and stuff like that. And but DS9 was very different than when I did Voyager or Enterprise because I wasn't on a ship. It wasn't. It was more like being in different rooms, stuff like that. So yeah, that's what I remember. It was a lot of bells and whistles, a lot of different sets or different parts of the sets. The lighting was very unique. It was real moody at times, real moody lighting and stuff, as you remember, right? So, yeah.
Much darker show than the original, that's for sure.
Definitely. Yeah.
Now, for the most part, you're playing this terrorist character who we do see later on just in plain civilian clothes, but you did get to put on a Starfleet uniform. And that, I would imagine, must have been pretty awesome. So, yeah, just tell me what it's like to get into that. And also, more importantly, how horribly tight was that to wear?
It was tight. Yeah, I mean, they just, I'm a pretty thin guy, but they find what, and it's like stretch, whatever the material is. But to put that on and look at myself in the mirror with the logo, right? Matthew, it's just, again, I'm like, I was having an out of body moments every time I did anything that I used to watch on the show or on a Next Generation or on the original. So I just felt like I was like Halloween, like I was a kid at Halloween, and except this was really happening. It was a camera following me around and stuff. So it was pretty exciting, I have to say. I tried to act like it didn't, like it was no big deal, but I'm telling you, inside, I was a 5-year-old kid again, or 8-year-old kid, whatever I was, 7-year-old kid.
Now, unfortunately, most of your scenes were not with the main bridge crew. It wasn't with Avery Brooks or a non-visitor or any of those folks. But did you get to talk with any of them at all in between takes?
No, not really, because a lot of times they shoot things separately, and they're not called. If they're not in that scene, they're not even on set. They're either in their trailer, or they might be shooting another setup somewhere. But so not really. And when I wasn't shooting, I went to my little trailerette. They have trailers for you. They have room for you. So I didn't, I didn't hang around and bug people, things like that. I just kind of stayed to myself. But I talked to, what was his name? With the big ears.
Armin Shimmerman?
Really great guy. Really funny guy. Wonderful to work with him, and talk with him. So I did have a lot of conversations with him. He's the kind of guy that makes a guest star feel really comfortable. He knows, you're walking into an existing rhythm. They've got something going. They've got their own chemistry and stuff. And, he remembers what that's like. And so he always tried to make guest stars very comfortable. I would say everybody did, but I remember him particularly.
That's good to hear, and as I'm sure you probably know from talking with him, Armin's also, he's a guy that comes from the theater world, and I've always felt like the folks come from theater versus folks come from TV. There's a big difference between them, and not to say that one is better than the other or how they interact is better than the other, but theater people seem to be very open and just like, hey, how's it going? They'll just come right up to you and start hugging you. It's kind of different from, maybe TV where it's a little bit more closed off at times.
That's an interesting point. I'd say, generally speaking, you're probably right about that. And, you bring up a good point about the Star Trek genre, is that a lot of the actors came from heavy theater background. Yeah. The reason why is because a lot of those, the work they have to do, a lot of the speeches are very muscular. I mean, you have to have some chops to do some. It's almost Shakespearean. Some of the stuff they did in Next Generations and stuff. And lots of theater background. And then if you have downtime, you end up invariably talking about, where have you worked? And, I worked with that director. And, you work at that theater? But if people come from a theater background, you're kind of, with that show, it was respected. In fact, I remember my agent said they like actors with theater background. They seek them because there's a lot involved with, especially the main characters. They have a lot to do, and they really wanted experienced people. So, yeah. And like you say, there's a little bit of a fraternity with theater people and stuff like that.
So, the other scene that you did as this character was not really amongst other crew members. It was a scene that was filmed separately. You were filmed solo for this, and it was then in the episode played on a monitor in front of Starfleet and Cardassian officials. So I'm just kind of curious, when you did this other scene that was done solo, was that on the same day as when you were on the bridge doing everything else, or was that a separate payday for you?
You mean you're still with DS9?
Yeah, with DS9.
Oh, where was I? Was I on the bridge then, or what was that part?
So the two scenes you had is basically most of your time was on the Deep Space Nine space station, but there's another scene that you did where I guess you had a pre-recorded message that the Cardassians filmed, and
usually, and I discovered this again with Voyager. You're often looking at a red dot for those. Those message ones, right? Leaving a message. So it was very much not in a separate studio, but a separate part of the stage, where they set up a little area that's sort of neutral, unless they want the background, then they put you in the background and just do it in, extreme close up of you. But what you're looking at is often a red dot next to the camera, or you're looking into the camera, depending what they want. They want direct on, if I'm talking to you, kind of thing. And that's a challenge because there's no other actor. You're just looking at a dot on the wall, and you have to make but if you're doing, basically it's like doing a monologue, from like in a theater. So I'm kind of used to that. got to do long speeches sometimes.
And as you mentioned, you did have to do that also in Voyager, which we'll get to in a second. But I don't know if you remember, because this is super nerdy. But was that the same day? Like was your shoot more than one day, or was it just kind of the one day and that was it for you?
No, there were. I was in several days, but there were some days I didn't work. But I was on the entire 10 days or 7 days they allot for the thing. I must have worked 2 or 3 days out of that, but they pay you for the week, kind of thing in that case, if you're a guest star. So they can use you any amount of days.
Well, that's the joy of acting. It's just wait and go.
Yeah. Hurry up and wait, we used to say.
Yep.
They rush you to get ready, and then you sit around a lot, So you have to keep your motor running, and actors do it in different ways to kind of keep fresh, or to keep, from getting, losing your energy.
Yeah. Well, your time as Samuels came to an end because you didn't make it out of the episode alive, but we did see you again not too long after, because you were, as we mentioned, in Voyager. And that was in an episode from the 4th season, which is called Day of Honor. And that one, you were a Katati alien named Ramen. And this is a curious-looking character here. So I've assumed you got back here because Junie Lowry was like, hey, this guy's awesome, let's bring him back. So you're back for this role. Did you know you were going to be an alien covered in however many pounds of prosthetics and makeup that was going to be?
Going into the audition?
Yeah.
I knew a little bit about it. I knew that it was an alien captain, I had no clue what that was going to entail, Matthew. But I was excited because I knew that, they were award-winning makeup artists. I knew that already, from the incredible work they did, Next Generations, and all the other stuff, it's just amazing. But I had no idea about what that was going to involve, which involved about 4 hours in the chair. Yeah. And you show up about 4 in the morning, and you just, they just build it, and you just can't believe it. And then he said the difficulty with people doing the mask work, is making it your own so that it doesn't play you. You have to play it. And I can see why, because it was very difficult to do, Matthew, because sensorily you're cut off in a way, even your ears are slightly muffled because of the prosthetic, So it was like weirdly being underwater in a sense, but you had and again, you'll get to this, but again, I had a scene with Janeway, right? But it was on the monitor. Again, I'm looking at a red dot. So I had somebody off camera delivering lines. So I never even met her. Yeah. So it was 4 hours in the chair and about an hour and a half out of the chair,
Wow. Had you ever done prosthetics before?
Not like that. No, I don't think so. I may have done minor things, mustaches and funny wigs and things like that, but not a full, other than Halloween, no.
Yeah. I mean, those Katati aliens, that's a pretty intense makeup job. And I got to imagine if that's your first time doing it, that's going to pretty much be the moment where you discover whether or not you're claustrophobic.
Yeah. And you're completely covered. And the makeup people were really helpful to me in saying, make it work. Don't let it overwhelm you, the mask, let it work for you. Right. Otherwise, it's just a pair of eyes behind a mask. It's not a real creature. So, but I'd never seen any creature like that before, honestly.
Yeah. Oh, they had some crazy aliens in Voyager. I got to really hand it to them. They went a little nuts on that show with those designs.
Yeah.
And I have to admit that, I didn't realize at first until I checked IMDb later on that there actually were 2 different people playing that species. I actually thought it was just you the whole time, but as I learned later on, it's actually Alan Altschuld who played the character that we actually see on the bridge. So, I didn't realize that. So did you actually get to spend any time at all really on the bridge, or was it all just the stuff you did solo?
Just stuff I did solo, which I don't know why they did. It wasn't the same character though, right? It was
a different character. And I was going to actually ask you about that because, I was wondering, they didn't really introduce that there was 2 different Katati aliens. It was just you're on the screen. Next time we see him, it's Alan Altschuld and he's hanging out with Captain Janeway. So, do you remember a scene where you introduced yourselves or anything like that? Was there anything else that maybe didn't make it to air?
I don't really know. I don't remember now. It's kind of a shadow memory. I don't remember why that happened. But I know that they shot my scene, which is really a lot of pressure, is that it's the martini shot, they call it. It's the last shot of the day. And those days go 12, 14 hours, right?
Oh, yeah.
My only shot of the day, but it's the crew's last shot of the day. So you're feeling a little like, let's get this done kind of feeling, right? I mean, they don't rush you, but there's a little pressure and they kind of nailing it. And I had a lot to say, so, but I don't know why I didn't do the bridge stuff. It was kind of strange because what I had to say was pretty important, requesting help and being, we were assimilated, right, by the Borg, the Katati people and all this kind of stuff. So, I don't know why. I can't remember. I don't remember being told, well, we don't want you on the bridge. There was nothing weird like that I remember.
It's just one of those weird things in Star Trek history, because even there's apparently an encyclopedia that came out long time ago that also neglects to mention that they're two separate characters. So it's like no one really even knew this. It's just a weird, bizarre thing that happened.
Well, I mean, I ostensibly was calling from my own ship, right?
Yeah.
My vessel. And we're kind of adrift, right? Or we're kind of, and obviously there's a few other people on the deck, right? Or, there's few of us left.
Yeah.
But why they didn't do a cut to a medium of me, speaking through the thing, I don't know why. It's just, like you say, it's kind of a head scratcher.
Yeah. And I'm kind of wondering too, because I've heard this story from other actors where, they're in super duper heavy makeup and they're probably just waiting around all day to do that scene like you just mentioned. That scene probably takes them a few minutes. So, and you're telling me that's the martini shot. So what was your day like as that character? Like, were you actually just there for 15 hours just waiting to go? All makeuped out?
Hurry up and wait.
Wow. And that whole ensemble and that whole outfit. That's crazy.
Yeah. They call you in early, I guess. And then you do the 4 hours and then you wait until it's time. So, it kept going on. And then finally it was time. So, and it's like you don't hear real well. So like you said earlier, it feels like you're kind of underwater a little bit. So to make that appear natural, or to make the character come through the mask was the key. And I hope I did. I mean, it was it's a kind of, as I remember the monologue, it was a very I remember the scene with Janeway when I watched it later. It's a very heartfelt scene. It's a very emotional exchange between these two captains, and a lot of empathy was expressed by her, so.
Luckily, your final Star Trek appearance that we're going to talk about was a lot less makeup, and I would say it's definitely the meatiest role you had in this franchise. So we're now jumping ahead to the second season of Enterprise in what I think is easily one of the best episodes of Enterprise ever, and that would be Carbon Creek. So, Again, walk us through the audition or casting process. Was this just, again, Junie remembering you and saying, I got something for you?
Yeah, at this point, I think Ron Surma was probably running a lot of the auditions, and Junie had different projects and stuff. And were they doing? No, they were just doing Enterprise at that time, right? But so Ron called me and said they want to see you again, and I said, "What's the part?" He says, "Well, it's a Vulcan." I went, "You're kidding me?" Because as I told you earlier, before we went on the air here, my favorite character was Spock, of course, growing up. And I said, you're kidding me. So I said, no. So I just had to go in and do one of the scenes in the audition room. Just one audition this time, went right to producers. And it was kind of a very warm feeling in the room. I felt like I did a good job. But, I felt like that a lot of times when I didn't get work. You go in and do your thing. And most of the time you don't get the job. That's just life of an actor. But I felt like because I had done the other two, that there was maybe some sort of edge. I had hoped, and it worked out. Yeah. Set in 1957, Carbon Creek, Pennsylvania.
Yep.
And as you know better than I, probably, it's a story told in flashback from her great grandmother, right?
Her second foremother, as she called it.
Her second foremother. And said,
Vulcans got to make things always more complicated.
Yeah. Oh no, that what you said before, that wasn't the first contact with humans and Vulcans. The first contact was, and then she tells the story, and then, but it was very unique, wasn't it, Matthew? I mean, this whole going down to Earth and trying to fit in with 1957 humans, and it was wild.
And I think that's one of my things that I like so much about this episode is because, you are a bunch of aliens living in 50s America. And then a lot of the plot, it's almost like typical American movie fare of the time even. And it's like you're just kind of almost playing these cliched characters, but you're Vulcans as you do it.
Yes. So we were, we don't express a lot of emotion, at least not on the surface. Although my running, as you know, Mestro, my running mate,
yep,
as you know, decided to stay. Yep. And that was, I think he had the emotional, he was the emotional center of that, of the group. I wanted to get the hell out of there. Couldn't stand these people. They smell, I don't like the way they act. And I was a real curmudgeon. I just was like, are we there yet? Are we there? I was that kind of a guy. Right. And, but Mestral was, it was a great character. And that guy, I forgot his name, but he was a great guy and a wonderful actor. We worked in.
That's J. Paul Boehmer, in fact, and we're going to be chatting with him on this show coming up very soon. So yeah, so I'm happy to get you guys together in this format, which is really fun.
Please tell him, Paul, hello, because he was. We stayed in touch for a while after we did the episode, but this was still before the days of, apps and things like that. I mean, it was 2002, so it was, beginning of those things. Cusp of the internet, yeah. But yeah, it was just amazing, to put on those ears, and they let me keep the ears,
Oh, I was going to ask you to keep those ears.
Got to keep them. Well, I think half the reason I got cast, Matthew, is because when I got to makeup trailer, the makeup guy says, "Oh, well, this is going to be easy because if you notice my ears, they're already a little alien-like. I mean, they're already a little elongated." In fact, I was told by a medium at some carnival, where you walk in and they tell your fortune, that I was an alien, that I came from another planet before and I was reincarnated. I said, oh, really? Oh, okay. She said, oh, yeah. She said, oh, yeah, your ears. That gives it away. So years later, I get cast in Star Trek because of the ears, So,
So, we mentioned J. Paul Boehmer, and you're also spending a lot of your time on screen with Jolene Blalock, who was to Paul typically, but in this case, again, she's her second foremother. What memories do you have from working with those two on set? Because you guys were pretty much, the Three Musketeers in this episode together. You're pretty much doing all your scenes together.
We were, and, she was terrific in terms of just kind of we created this little mini family, out of the macro family, right? And so it was real easy working together. There was she didn't do a star thing, she was, it was really about the work. And J. Paul was terrific, and they all come from theater backgrounds. So it was, we had a lot in common. And just doing the various setups and scenes was time consuming, but it was fun. And that was where I first, was able to, was in the ship. I was in a ship, right? And I was able to actually push buttons and stuff like that. And I'm going, oh my goodness, I'm in a starship. Finally.
So, Stron is a pretty fun character at times, despite being ever so serious and very much cynical of what's happening around him. And I got to say, I also love that Three Stooges hairdo that he has. But, the thing that we mentioned, and that you well know as well, because you're a big fan of Spock, Vulcans don't really show emotion. And it was Mistral, J. Paul Boehmer, who his character got to be the one showing more outward emotions. But Stron, he is Vulcan to the core. And there was not really much going on there. So, I'd like to hear from you. Was it a challenge to play a character like this who doesn't really emote in the same way you typically do with other characters?
Yes. It was a challenge. I go back to that story I told you about less is more, with that director who less is really more here. I mean, it's really about processing, and it's like a curiosity, but it's not there's no overreaction. It's underreaction, if anything. It's all sort of understated and stuff. So it was a real challenge for me to not be a robot. They're not robots. They're flesh and blood, just other creatures who process things a little bit different, and I really took inspiration from Spock. I kind of went back and watched Spock a lot because he was half human, which was always his dilemma, right? But he, half breed kind of a guy, right? But I took a lot of, I went back and watched him because he was my model.
And what's fascinating, Michael, and yes, I'm using the Spock word here. What's fascinating is when you started to talk about how you do this character, you started to actually fall into Stron a little bit. I don't know if you're aware of that. You started just kind of, the way you were talking, it sort of became Vulcan.
Yeah. Yes. It's like sort of getting on a bike again. If you can revisit characters you played, it may take a while to get it back, but for a week there, I was Stron. And how they just process things like, well, I don't agree, or whatever. I can't remember any of the lines, but wasn't. Did I can't remember if I went in. Did we go to? We went into the town, right? I think I went into town. We all took jobs, as I remember, right? And I became a plumber.
Yeah, you were the plumber who worked for the lady next door.
Yeah, but I was secretly using Vulcan technology to repair this. Yeah, repair the pipes and stuff like that, which is against the. Was that against the Prime Directive? Did I? Oh no, there was no.
No, because you were doing that in secret, so they never knew.
They never knew, right? Okay, right. Yeah. So, it was that kind of stuff was really fun to do.
I mean, it feels like this part really did leave behind some big memories for you, and I want to just maybe take a second to kind of appreciate this here, because now now we've talked about an hour, and I kind of know a little bit more about your history and backstory. We talked earlier about your love of this character, your love of Spock, and there's, I'm sure, a reason why Spock was your favorite. But then on top of that, we talked about your family a little bit, and just you finding theater as a way to find family. And Stron is a character that is very much, I feel like the embodiment of a lot of parts about you. If you think about it, he's a Vulcan, number one, which there's something in there that has drawn you to that type of character, to that species. Mm-hmm. And then here you are, this character finds his family. His family is with Jolene Blalock and with J. Paul Boehmer. It's kind of interesting. I don't know if you ever have thought about that before, but just, chatting with you now, it's something that just kind of occurred to me.
Yeah, you're quite right. It became a family within a family, right? So we had to create a family, and we were actors as family, and then there's the Star Trek family. So it was like concentric circles of family. I think that's at the end of the day, Matthew, I think the best part, I hear a lot of athletes, they say, do you miss playing the game? Do you miss this? They say, well, I do, but it's not what I really miss. I say, what do you miss? Athletes always say, I miss the team, the camaraderie, the family that's created in a team. And so it's very much like that in TV, film, and to lesser or greater degrees. I've been on sets where it's a little different, and it's you go in and do your thing, and you're not really included on anything, especially if you're not a star. You're treated differently and stuff like that. But that's just the way it is. But once in a while, you have experiences where people become friends. You create a kind of pseudo family for a while, and you don't forget it. I don't forget those moments with those people. This is a little digression, but one of my very favorite roles I ever did was one scene in a TV show called Seventh Heaven. You remember that show?
Yep.
And it was, I don't know if you have time for this
Sure.
Short story.
Go ahead.
All right.
Stage is yours.
The guy, I forget his name, Steven, somebody was the lead. He basically played a minister. It was also he had kids and all this stuff, and he was the pastor.
He was also in the first Star Trek motion picture.
Oh, that's right. He was. Yeah, that's right. And he had done a lot of stuff. So he was having a lot of nightmares in this episode about a Halloween was coming up, and his nightmare was a memory of when he was a kid. And when he was a kid, the teacher would bring in, or everyone would bring in all these masks, right? And no one was allowed to grab a mask until recess or until the end of the day, right? So his nightmare is he remembers a time when the teacher says, okay, you can go grab a mask. And he pushes this other little kid away who's holding the mask he wants. And he basically bullies him, and pushes him away and is mean to him. And the kid says to him, I got it for you. And he's been haunted, by this this memory. And so he says to somebody, I got to find this kid because I've never forgiven myself for, what happened. So he searches me out. I'm the kid, right? I was the kid in elementary school with him. So it's such a beautiful scene because he knocks on the door. I answer the door. I don't know who he is. And he holds the mask up, Matthew. And he says, I brought this mask back. I think it really should belong to you. And my character at first is confused, and then it all comes back to him. And they have this incredibly touching, lovely scene together where he apologizes, and I accept the apology. And it's just this, I'm telling you, crews on any TV show or movie are very hardened guys and gals, they're not moved. But when we shot this scene, the entire crew was crying. It was so moving, because you talk about an instant. I'd never met Stephen before, but when we played the scene and then afterwards, we felt like we knew each other very well. And it was like this big hug, and, it was amazing. So when you have moments like that, where the script is beautiful and the actor is a giving actor and the scene is interesting, whether it's a fun one, comedy, or whether it's something like this, you always remember those actors. You always remember that scene. And that's what I remember are those kinds of moments, Star Trek moments like that,
It's interesting when you actually open up and give an authentic emotion to another performer. It's like suddenly, even if that emotion wasn't yours, it's now become a shared thing between you and that person. And now it's somehow, despite just playing characters, it now just feels so real to you.
It absolutely was two human beings connecting.
Yeah. And
when that happens, and it doesn't happen all the time, Matthew, when that happens, it's magic. So I mean, it was obviously one of my very favorite memories of an acting memory, and it was very brief. It was, I invite him in. So you want to come in for a cup of coffee? And so he does, and then, he's able to move on from his nightmares, because the lesson was about forgiveness, right, and making amends, things like that, things that are very, very hard to do.
Yeah,
but it was great.
Well, I'm just extra glad you told that story because it still is tied to Star Trek because Stephen Collins was in the movie, so that's just perfect timing.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, you're right. Thanks for reminding me about that. I forgot
too.
Yeah, Star Trek. I mean, everybody wanted to be on one of those shows, didn't they? I mean, they clamored, film actors, they wanted to appear on a show like that, A show like NYPD Blue, same thing. And the people who became guest stars wanted to appear on that TV show because it had such integrity and such, great stories and stuff like that. When you have something like that happen, people want to be a part of it, don't they?
So, Michael, we talked about a lot of really exciting things here. And there's a lot of things we didn't get to cover today in this interview, but I'd like to hear from you. Yeah. What was your best day on a set? What was your worst day on a set?
Any set?
Any set.
Best day on a set. Wow. You caught me unprepared here. Best day on a set. Well, I had a lot of best days on sets. Probably doing Enterprise and doing some of those scenes in the kitchen there was a great day. The Seventh Heaven scene that I did was a fantastic day on a set. working with Angela Lansbury, and I've had a lot of good days on sets. Worst day on the set. Yeah, let's see. Trying to remember. I can't remember like something that just, sticks out. Yeah, I'm sorry. I can't remember like a worst day on a set that it's like just a horrible nightmare memory. I don't remember that, but I do remember, and when I did, what was the movie? It was Mulholland Falls. It was a film with a lot of stars in it. Was and what's his name's brother was in that. He died actually, but it was it was Michael Madsen was in that, and Nick. No, it was quite a cast, and I had a small role, but one of those guys really did a star thing, and came in and was telling people to move around, and and was just being a real and said that was not a pleasant day for any of us who were playing the smaller parts. It was just a real weird set.
Yeah.
So maybe that was it.
I mean, to be fair, if you didn't have a lot of bad days, that's a pretty good thing, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I had a lot of days that were in between worst days and best days. A lot of days that went, some things went real well, and even when I did that movie in Bulgaria, I did a blood sport number 4.
Yeah,
I mean, it was crazy. Dark Kumite, yeah, it was such a fun role, but very almost like guerrilla filmmaking. I mean, it was really low budget and stuff, but it was fun, and I met lifelong friends from that film. So that was a pretty good experience. Not a good film, but a good experience.
Like, that's your words, not mine. I'm not going to touch that one. I like the Bloodsport series; they're fun. But how about a moment or a role from your performing career that was the most challenging for you, but ultimately became the most rewarding?
Most challenging, most rewarding. Well, as I talked to you earlier about doing the ramen, that was a very challenging wearing that prosthetic. But I think the speech came out okay. As I recall watching it, it was okay. It was rewarding. There were a lot of other, stuff. I'd have to look at. I should have had my IMDb, pulled up here so I can kind of refer to things I did. But I'll tell you what was hard but rewarding. I did Paranormal Activity, like number 4 or something, and very challenging because you had to. I was kind of the exorcist priest, and I was, playing to things that weren't there, things that weren't moving, and it was a kind of a scary thing. But it was very rewarding in the end to do that, because it was a lot of improv. Basically the script sort of changed magically right before your eyes. They'd rewrite right there on the spot. And and the actors who were the regular actors, I had a recurring role on in the movie. I kept coming back until I was killed. But they said it's like this every day. I said, how do you work like this? It's so scary, because I'm a guy that comes from the theater. The words are king. So the words are like, oh, whatever, just something about like, wow. Okay. So it really challenged me to be more improvisational and to trust, what was going on. So probably the most challenging and one of the most rewarding because I made it through it.
Yeah. So the real Paranormal Activity was actually the script.
Yes.
Yes. I'm allowed one bad joke every interview, Michael.
It's a very good joke. And it was a little scary because I had to say a lot of stuff in Latin, a lot of priest stuff. And that was a little, I'd watched too many Exorcist movies. I was like, okay, what's going to happen here? So that's it. Yeah.
All right, well, how about most valuable lesson you've learned, whether that was about acting or about life or maybe both, that you ever were told by someone?
Be prepared, be honest, be flexible. My Boy Scout training. Be prepared. But, that's it. And, try to be flexible because life is always changing. And if you're not flexible with life, it's going to snow you under. There's a lot of things that happen in life, both wonderful and not so wonderful things. So
All right, so Michael, last thing for today, and this is the most important one here. What is the best thing about being a part of the Star Trek universe?
Wow. Being part of the legacy of the kind of storytelling and lesson episodes and the kind of camaraderie that exists, the passing the torch on from each series to the next, and the lessons about the most obvious things are, how can we all get along as species, as creatures, as, what are the life lessons embedded in each episode of every Star Trek, So I just appreciate the sort of moral lessons and, things that are in every Star Trek. It's a series with substance, and I'm so proud to be a part of a little small part of that, and to have been able to play parts that I could only imagine as a kid playing,
Well, I'm glad that you got to live that boyhood dream of being the Vulcan, and you got to be part of this universe. And I want to thank you again also just today for your time, your generosity, telling us all these great stories and all this great insight into what you do. So, Michael, it's been wonderful chatting with you today. So thank you so much for all of this.
My pleasure. Great meeting you, Matthew. And I wish you all the success and happiness in the world, and to all your viewers.
Thank you. And of course, because you were a Vulcan, we got to do this together now. We got to do the Live Long and Prosper, Michael.
Live long and prosper.
That's it for this week's episode of Trek Untold. Until next time, don't forget to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Trek Untold, all one word. If you'd like to directly support this podcast, please consider becoming a Patreon supporter over on patreon.com/TrekUntold, which gives you access to some great perks that can't be beat. Or pick up some merchandise from our store, or use my Amazon shop link to check out all kinds of different Star Trek merchandise. Links for all these things are in the show notes. Shout out to Triple Fiction Productions for being a key sponsor of Trek Untold. Don't forget to check them out and all of the fine folks whose ads you've seen or heard on this podcast too. If you have any questions, feedback, or comments for the show, or would like to suggest a guest or discuss sponsorship options for any of these episodes in the future, send me a message at trekuntold@gmail.com. Special thanks to Cool Waters Productions for providing us with this week's guest. Check out inhouse-con.com for more info on upcoming events with all of their Star Trek clients and the other celebs that they work with. And head over to coolwatersprod.com to pick up autographs and more from all of them. I hope to see you here again as we uncover more untold stories from Star Trek and beyond, and get to know even more amazing people who have contributed to this ever-expanding universe. Until next time, I'm Matthew Kaplowitz, and remember, fortune favors the bold.
Trek Untold is sponsored by TrekSphere.com, promoting fan-produced Star Trek content in all forms, is powered by the Rageworks podcasting network, and is affiliated with Nerd News Today.